There are virtually no words that can properly sum up how I feel about this episode other than I definitely have a new favorite character who, in a lot of ways, gave me the feeling that I was staring right at a mirror. And I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who feels that way. Amphibia Season 2, Episode 6, Marcy at the Gates, finally gave us the proper introduction of the last member in the Earth Trio, Marcy Wu, while also planting the seeds for a lot of plot points. Seriously, the amount of seeds planted in this episode is insane. So we're going to run through all the foreshadowing, all the world building, and the characterization of both Marcy and the Newts that we met. Why a lot of people may see themselves within Marcy, and how the Newts may not be deserving of their ego. Of course, spoiler warning, if you are not caught up with Amphibia and you don't want to be spoiled, please go catch up and then come back. With all that said, let's dive in. We open with the family finally approaching the gates of Newtopia after 4.5 previous episodes featuring mysterious robot factories, Ohms confused for axolotls by dum-dums, that's me, and alternate reality versions of iconic Disney television characters. However, instead of excitement, Anne can only feel disappointment and concern, as the road trip across the valley hasn't shown a single peep of Marcy. Oh, just you wait, sister. I really appreciate immediately calling out the elephant in the room, the audience's expectations for Marcy, given how things went with Sasha, and on a smaller level, the initial synopsis for the series found in the press release, stating how Anne would find her first true friend in Sprig. As someone who was on the train of Marcy's going to be cool, but manipulative like Sasha, it was refreshing for this episode to immediately throw me off guard by just saying, hey, don't worry, this time, things are going to be different. This isn't to say Marcy is flawless, but her flaws make me really identify with the character even more. In fact, unlike Sasha, whose characterization was taught to us through her first solo episode, Prison Break, we're given the 411 on Marcy through a flashback on Earth. Now, I don't know if Marcy is intended to be a character with ADHD, but a lot of her tendencies that get her into danger, I find in myself. And I was diagnosed with ADHD at the start of middle school. While I didn't have amazing grades like Marcy, I too found myself, and still do, hyperfixating on my interest instead of everything else around me. Like how Marcy is easily sucked into her D&D campaign, and her video games. Shout out to all the Joy-Con boys. For me, just swap D&D with drawing on the back of my class papers and Nintendo Switch with cell phone. Although I did have a phase in senior year of high school where I finally got a 3DS and was all about it. Unfortunately for me, the handheld was approaching the end of its lifespan. But the trait that made me identify with this character even more are her clumsy tendencies and lack of awareness to her surroundings. Every single thing that happened to her in the sequence happened to me at some point, even if it wasn't as rapid fire. I've walked right into poles on the track field, tripped down the stairs, you name it. Even now, I can't survive a day without my girlfriend roasting me for something unreasonably clumsy that I did. And Marcy's clumsiness also goes hand in hand with her being kind of oblivious to herself and her surroundings, which, yeah, her backpack being unzipped and having everything fly out, I still have that happen to me. And when it comes to a laptop, I really shouldn't. There are more ADHD-like traits I recognized in Marcy's mannerisms and speech patterns. Speaking faster than most? I mean, hell, those of you who have been subscribed for a long time know that I still can talk really fast. I'm sorry, guys, I have been trying. Going on tangents that are tied to hyperfixations? I mean, my entire job is a hyperfixation. Relating everything back to those hyperfixations. Jumping around different points under the same topic? Of course she's hyperactive, which can lead to the clumsy mishaps. I could truly be here all day. If Marcy isn't ADHD coded, I'll take the L. But for now, it is my firm headcanon. The planters finally arrived to the gates of Newtopia, Hop Hop setting the expectation of answers pertaining to the Calamity Box and Anne's way home. A lot has been hinging on Newtopia blowing the lid wide open when it comes to Amphibia's relationship with Earth. The curator, aka Frogstan, revealed the kingdom is loaded with human artifacts, such as the Skip Man Anne encountered. General Yunnan established that not only is their army a force to be reckoned with, but that she was the youngest Newt to join the ranks, opening the gateway for non-Newts and even non-amphibians to be a part of the army. And as we got closer to Newtopia, the more transparent it became Marcy would be there to meet Anne, thanks to, all the advertising, but in a good way. The Barbarians are the perfect thematic antagonist for arriving at Newtopia, as they're a direct juxtaposition of what Newtopia represents and the inhabitants within. The Newts have been built up to be wise, extremely intelligent, resourceful, and pretty much the quote-unquote superior amphibian. Meanwhile, the Barbarians are just that, barbarians. Nowhere near the level of intelligence. They're extremely animalistic, and instead of fighting with their head, they're all about primal instinct. It was nice seeing the planters use their Kingdom Hearts limits, staying on that teamwork grind. Although a lot of the planter action hasn't been over-the-top dynamic, it's been a delight watching them work together all the same, launching each other to deliver different blows to the Barbarians. If we ever get an Amphibia game, there's already so many different abilities they can adapt into combos and such. I do not want to see a drive moveset, future developers. As the Barbarians begin to outnumber the planters, they're saved by a mysterious warrior armed with a crossbow, who beefs the landing. Marcy! Or should I say, Master Marcy, Chief Ranger of the Newtopian Night Guard. The heartfelt reunion between Anne and Marcy features a rendition of the credits theme. Considering Matt's tweet about leitmotifs in Amphibia and the general premise of the show, its use here has me thinking it's not just a credits theme, but all this time, it's been the friendship theme. Marcy relating everything back to her interest allows for the show to crack a few meta gags, like the found family trope aka family of choice, as well as a spoof of JRPGs like Dragon Quest with Vagabondia Chronicles, which has a box art that can have easy parallels made to the main trio of Amphibia. The center protagonist dons a sword that's nearly identical to Sasha's. The cuddly animal companion with a Glock can be compared to Marcy, with a long-range weapon like her crossbow and arrows, a green bandana, which we know is Marcy's signature color for a plethora of reasons, and the pink-haired protagonist on the left appears to be a spellcaster, which we can compare to Anne due to the blue outfit and flowers in her head, like the leaves and sticks in Anne's hair. Now, we haven't seen Anne actually spellcast at this point in the series. In fact, she's been partial to a sword. So I do believe this was a great dose of foreshadowing on the team's end. And if I had to guess, assuming they went this far, the antagonist on this box art is akin to King Andrias, and the dragon is akin to, wait for it, the robot following the planters. Marcy's observations of Hop Hop, Polly, and Sprig lends to us some very interesting insight. Marcy finds farmers underappreciated and goes as far to call them the backbone of society, which made me raise an eyebrow because, personally, I'm not convinced the Newts were always the ones in power. After the events of Season 1 led to Hop Hop inadvertently creating a rebellion across the valley, an outsider being able to recognize a frog's value feels like a wink at the bigger picture of amphibian hierarchy and why it's broken, and where that could go in the future. Marcy deduces Polly's legs will arrive in 2 months, thus causing her blossom into a froglet, which is just a blunt plot point being thrown at us. Not complaining at all, but it makes me wonder, is 2 months looking like the end of this season? Maybe season 3? Or are we looking at the end of the series? The time frame being laid out for us. Unless 3 is the end, on the accord of Brawley's own pacing, but hey, 4 is the typical number at Disney, and I'd love if Polly had such a notable shift in status quo for more than just a little bit of time. Sprig has the most vague deduction that calls him to question his lineage and parents who we know aren't in the picture. Marcy states she's never seen a frog his color before, and we also don't know if he's poisonous. Since Season 2 started up, fans have been vocal about the idea of Sprig having a potential relation to Yunnan, and considering the episode Family Shrub introduced us to a deceased honorary planter, Emma the Newt, who shares a pink hue, this could certainly allude to Sprig and Polly having some Newt in their blood. Considering the Newts view themselves as superior, this development makes a lot of sense, as it could put the planter family on an equal level. But I hope to go more into this at a later time. Speaking of Newts, we're introduced to a different trio, the Triple B, Branson, Bartley, and Blair. Bickering brothers who embody that same snooty attitude and superiority complex found in Yunnan, including how they lack self-awareness on how obnoxious they are. While not necessarily hostile, they seem to have a prejudice towards other amphibians, immediately asking the planters if they're lost upon first glance. Because of course, why would they be here, in the pristine Newtopia? They even refer to the planters as dirty peasants, yet welcome them, because I assume they don't mind having those they view as beneath them bask in their glory. And it probably helps that the planters are escorted by Marcy. Triple B scoffs at fieldwork, finding the idea of manual labor laughable. Again, that's something reserved for the lowly frogs. They seem as if they can't agree on anything, so despite their sought-after wisdom, they still have egos that get in the way. It seems as if these brothers will be involved for the long run pertaining to Newtopia, so I hope to see them develop. The joke of Hop Hop claiming they are anarchists also feels like ironic foreshadowing between Grimes' plans to overthrow the king, the rebellious frog standing up to the toads, and the fact Hop Hop is indirectly responsible for both of those things being set into motion. The domino effect is wild. While we're on the route of foreshadowing, Marcy's strategy of driving the queen away to claim victory, despite that being how ants and a lot of other insects operate anyways, could be a long-term nod at King Andrias, and the key to defeating him and his inevitably antagonistic forces. By the way, Sprig being suspicious because of Marcy working for the king, even if Marcy's in the clear, we know that's justified once shit hits the fan, being suspicious of King Andrias himself. That being said, I do think there's a way Marcy could have her own toxic habits without intending to be malicious and manipulative. Because of her role as the smart one of the trio back on Earth, Marcy's decision-making may have a bigger impact than others. Let's say Anne or Sasha disagree with Marcy on how to handle a situation, or one of them favors one activity over the other. It'd ideally be easier for Marcy to come up with her own argument and logic for why her way is the best way. And even if Sasha or Anne don't feel great about it, they may feel compelled to bow out and side with Marcy off the merit that she's the smart one, so she knows what's best. However, Marcy does say later on that Sasha always decided the plan back home, so it could be more of her influencing Sasha than directly taking charge. There's also still the possibility that she had some sort of idea that the Calamity Box would transport them to Amphibia, given she's shown to do extensive research in this episode, especially when it comes to Amphibia history. For all we know, that didn't necessarily have to start with her arrival in Amphibia, but I digress. Marcy having an interest in objects that mirror her interest would check out with me. So the idea that she caught wind of the Calamity Box's existence, that it could be rumored to transport humans to a brand new dimension, while she could have had low faith in it being true, it could have compelled her just enough at the exciting idea of a real-life adventure to try it. At the very least, she could have gotten it as a gift to Anne to entice her into trying out Marcy's interest, unaware that it would force Anne into actually trying out her interest in a very literal way. We also learned that Marcy is very resourceful, utilizing the environment around her to combat the Bravery ants with alchemy and stink shrooms. Hop Hop also immediately grows fond of Marcy, which can be concerning down the line, since we know Marcy eventually will have her sights set on the Calamity Box, which is in Hop Hop's possession, well, in the ground back in Wartwood. But the biggest highlight of this episode is during the final battle with the Bravery ants. When Sprig faces certain death, Marcy displays immense bravery and goes right in to rescue him. This is very similar to the Season 2 premiere, Handy Ann, and especially the series premiere, Ann or Beast, because this display is accompanied with a brief green eye glow, similar to Anne's habits of glowing blue eyes, hinting at calamity powers. And just like Anne, her first demonstration of this is when saving Sprig. But how exactly do these powers work? Do they differ from Anne, whose powers I believe to manifest that hallucination Sprig we saw in Anne Hunter? That wasn't stress, that was the Calamity Box. She had no way of knowing all that wisdom. Maybe Marcy is stronger, faster, not as clumsy under its influence. And with this, we can safely assign each Calamity Box color to the main Earth trio. Anne's associated with the blue gem, Marcy is associated with the green gem, and that leaves Sasha to be associated with the purple gem, or, as it apparently also appears, the pinkish reddish gem. How does that work? God, we need answers. And after this intense battle with the beheading, we finally enter Newtopia. It's beautiful. tons of buildings, 2 prominent statues, which could be of importance. The second one reminds me a bit of Yunnan. I'm excited to explore all of this city. We meet Lady Olivia, another high-ranking member of Newtopia, who seems more thrown off by the planters than Anne, which I think is kind of messed up, since there are clearly more frogs than humans in this world. Jeez, the prejudice runs deep. But again, they're courteous. And we have reason to suspect that Olivia was already anticipating Anne's arrival. It's very interesting to watch all of this unravel. As the episode comes to a close, Anne and Marcy try to figure out their next move, while Anne also fills Marcy in about Sasha, leaving out some very important details, like the fact Sasha is lieutenant for Grime, so we know there's still more drama to come. Their plan, as broad as it is, find Sasha and find a way home. Wow, nothing changed. But of course, plans can change, as in the distance, the planters are being watched by King Andrias, voiced by Keith David. Andrias remarking that the pieces are starting to fall into place, setting a wooden chess piece of Anne next to Marcy. And notice that they're surrounded by toads and frogs, but not newts. I believe the king wants a war that really just serves as a distraction in order for him to obtain the Calamity Box, with Marcy and Anne as his unknowing pawns. But as always, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. What do you think? How did this episode make you feel? What are your theories on what could happen next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet them at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at Fox. You can also drop a follow over on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please sort of like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Fox, signing out.